Hello and welcome to the third in a series of deep dive videos about the techniques and prop design and considerations of numbers juggling. This is part of my Flash 30 project where I wanted to improve all of my numbers juggling records by one object, one prop per prop, so going from 7 clubs to 8 clubs, going from 9 rings to 10 rings, and going from 11 balls on camera to 12 balls on camera. So that was the plan. So I've done a deep dive about the club design and also about the rocket launch equations, which I'll touch on slightly here, but you don't need to have seen those previous videos. Today I'm going to be talking about the design considerations of ring holsters and numbers juggling specific ring design. I've already completed, like I say, the 10 rings. I'm working on 11 rings and 12 rings now, just to see if I can get 12 rings before I get 12 balls. Let's see how that goes. And like I say, this is a deep dive into this topic. So I don't know how long this video is going to last. I'm just recording it as a live stream. You can see me here on the webcam, and you'll be seeing some videos that I play here from my editing screen. But I always like to think that if you can't talk about a topic for a long time, like 20, 30, 40 minutes, it means you might not fully understand it. So hopefully this doesn't last a long time. But if it does run long, I've warned you, this is a deep dive on purpose. So the thing about ring holsters is that they're great for performing, but I'm not considering performing. So everybody who's ever used a ring holster on stage and they want it to look cool, they don't want it to look good, that's not what I'm talking about here. So let's have a look at, Sergey Ignattov. He's like dressed as a cowboy or whatever's going on here, and the ring holsters look like a quick draw kind of thing. It's like you're pulling out a gun and shooting a gun really quickly. He's wanting to look cool. It doesn't really matter that these are wobbling around. Here's Anthony Gatto doing the same kind of thing. It's a dramatic moment in the show where they pause juggling and then everything dies down and they put the belt on and then they come out and they place the rings in there, and then the juggler does the ring juggling numbers feat with those, and it communicates to the audience that, hey, I'm juggling so many rings here now that I can't fit them all in my hands. This is great. This is a great moment here on stage. I can't fit all the rings in my hand, and so I need these holsters. And here's the thing with Sergey Ignattov. We know that he can fit all the rings in his hand because he's just doing 7 and he's doing 9. But then when he does 11 rings on stage, he juggles 9 and then goes up into 11. So we know he can fit all 9 rings in his hand because he does it at the start when he does 11 rings. But here it's a dramatic moment. So what you're looking for on stage with the ring holster is you want it to look cool. And you're trying to communicate that I'm doing so many things that not all of them can fit in my hand. I'm not trying to do that in this project. I'm not interested in doing numbers juggling on stage, although I do the same thing. I put a ring in my mouth just to show that, and I even say to the audience, well, the ring's in my mouth. I say, I can't fit all the rings in my hand, so I'm putting it in my mouth until I need it. So that's why you use these on stage. You want them to look cool. You want them to look like a quick draw holster from a cowboy. That's the kind of thing that you're looking for. But I'm not interested in using ring holsters to look cool or to help on stage. I want to use ring holsters just to make not just the juggling easier, because I could just push through and learn how to do 10 rings without using a holster or maybe putting them in my mouth or anything like this. Like here's me doing 8 rings back at the start of a numbers juggling league because I wanted to get first place in a numbers juggling league. So I was like, oh yeah, just get anything with 8 rings. So I just did this. But it's not just about being able to do the juggling more easily. For me, it's a big thing about the training. I want to be putting the least amount of stress through my body, through my hands as possible when working on numbers juggling. That's why when you use when you're doing numbers juggling with beanbags, you use small beanbags. With clubs, I wanted to use lighter clubs with narrower handles to make it easier. So that's the reason why I want to do this stuff with a ring holster, is to make training more pleasant on the body. To be able to put the least amount of effort into each time I try 10 rings. The less amount of time that I have to put in each time I do anything, it means I can train it for longer and get better more quickly and improve over time. I keep knocking my mouth. I should do that. So to really get this across, check these guys out. This is one of the Chiang brothers, and they have this really weird ring holster, like ring grip. What they do is that they put one ring in between each finger. And because one ring is in between each finger, you can see it here. Oh no, I've moved it again. You can see it here. they literally can't do any more than 4 in each hand because they just run out of fingers with that grip. I don't need to worry about that. So the ring design that I wanted to go for, I didn't want to worry about aesthetics. I didn't want to be worrying about performance. And I realized that it's then all about reducing, for me, the amount of weight in my hand as it's moving up and down. Let me explain this. This is what I talked about in the rocket launch equation deep dive. When you've got rings in your hand, if you say you've got 5 rings in your hand because you want to do 10 rings, when you do the first throw, you're having to accelerate the weight of 5 rings upwards, then you let go, then you accelerate the weight of 4 rings down, and then you accelerate 4 rings up, let go of 1, and then you accelerate 3 rings down, then you accelerate 3 rings up, let go of 1, then you accelerate 2 rings down, and then 2 rings up, let go of that one, and finally you're accelerating 1 ring down and 1 ring up. And if you're using heavy rings, say these are the cathedral juggling rings, these are 105 grams each. So if you're moving these up and down, when you're doing that first throw, 105 grams each, that's the first bit of acceleration is 525 grams you're accelerating up, and then you're accelerating down 420 grams, and then you're accelerating up 420 grams. So the rocket launch equations say that the fewer rings that you have in your hands that you're accelerating up and down at the start, to get to the right height. So I want to throw these rings up to height of 10, site swap, what's that, like A or whatever. So I want to throw all of these. If I have just 1 ring, I'm just accelerating 105 grams up, and then my hand is free to do whatever it wants. And then the next ring can go up. So if you reduce the number of things in your hands as you're trying to do your first throw to the correct height, it means that you're putting less strain into it. And that's exactly what Sergey Ignattov is doing here. When you actually see him do 9 rings, he's actually never throwing anything to height 9, site swap 9, straight when he's got more than 1 ring. The first time he ever throws to the height that he wants to do 9 rings is when he's got 1 ring in his hand. So he's doing 7 rings, and now he goes up to the height 9. So those throws, everything that he's doing up to the highest point that he needs to throw, he's doing with only 1 ring in his hand. Then he grabs the next 2 rings, and that's it. Same with the Qian brothers here as well. So when they do this first throw, that one goes to height 8, this one goes to height 8, this one goes to height 8, this one goes to height 10. So it's only when they've got 1 ring in each hand throws to height 10, then those ones go to height 10, grabs the last ones from his mouth, and then all of this is at height 10. Again, this is zoomed in, so you can't really see it, but you can work it out. So everything that he's doing is 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 10, and then grabs, so it's 3 to height 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. And that's when he gets into the 10 rings. Same with Sergey Ignattov here. He juggles 9 rings, and the first time he throws to height 11 is when he's got all of the rings out of his hands at least once, which means he's only got 1 ring in each hand to throw up to that height. So when you're throwing to the highest height, at the highest speed, you want the fewest number of rings in your hand possible to reduce the strain. Anthony Gatto, he just brute forces it. He just throws straight away up to height 11, straight from the hand. And most people who've done 11 rings do it this way. Not everyone, but most people who've done 11 rings in a cascade. Here's Pavel Vsekovich. He just straight away brute forces it, throws straight to height 11. Nothing wrong with this. It looks good. People perform 11 rings on stage. This is how they're going to have to do it, because to look good on stage, you really want these, 1 ring each side per holster. Again, nothing wrong with this technique. It's just that this isn't the technique that I wanted to go to. So I experimented early on with, let's just show me doing this here. This was when I tried 8 rings a few years ago, or last year I did 8 rings. This was like this. This was actually the date is here. I can see it. It's the 21st of March last year. I tried 8 rings for the first time with a holster. Rather than having them in my mouth, let's just put them in the holster and, very importantly, wear gloves. So again, reduce the strain, reduce the forces going into the hands. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Here I'm just going straight up to the right height, but it doesn't really matter. The thing is that's happening here though, it's actually slowing down over time. And I've made some notes over here about how many frames of video. I've done it by this video editing because I can go frame by frame between different throws. So that's throw 1, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20. So that's 24 frames between the first 2 throws. And between the next 2 throws, I think I made some notes of it here. Did I? Can't find it anyway. But then, as I go between these last 2 throws, it actually slows down. So this is a fast throw to get to the second throw, and then another fast throw to get to this third throw. And then the amount of time it takes me to reach down and grab those is actually quite a long time to reach down between these throws and grab the rings. And the reason why it takes a lot longer is because my hands are up here completing the throw, and then like when my hands, the lowest point my hands go down between throws is here. So this is the turnaround point that I want to throw again. So you see my hands are at this level between the throws. So between the first 2 throws, they come down to that level, okay? So around about there. And then they come down to around about there. And then between the next 2 throws, they come down to around about there, but there's no rings in it yet. And then they've got to reach all the way down to here, grab those last 2 rings, then get back up to here, and only here is where where my hands want to be to actually start the final throws. And then I can start the final throws. And then between the other throws, my hands are only coming down to this level again. So what's happening is my hands are up here in the correct position, in the correct position, in the correct position. And then at this point, they've got to go down out of position, grab these rings, get back into position, and then get back up to continue juggling where I want the rings to go, which is around about here. You know, it's around about this level. So that's what I was looking at, and I looked at the same kind of thing with this when I did 9 rings as well. And I'm doing 9 rings in a 10 fountain pattern here. So I'm starting off here and I'm throwing the first ones, and you see my hands all the way through these sections here are always just hovering around about there. Let me turn off this thing. So if you see where my hands are going up and down to, it's around about here, going up and down here. And then when I'm suddenly going, hey, now let me get these final rings, my hands drop all the way down, grab the rings, and then go all the way back up. And so these are with the 105 gram rings with this with this holster, this like traditional style, you know, hip holster area. Between the first 2 throws, between this throw here and this throw here, is 27 frames, and then it gets faster as the rings leave my hands, and my hands can move up and down faster because there's less momentum, there's less weight in them. I'm having to use less force to move them up and down. So it's 27 frames between the first 2 throws, and then it's another 22 frames here, and then it gets down to 20 frames. And then, so it's dropping 27 frames between the throws, 22 frames between the throws, 20 frames between the throws. And really, you want to be speeding up as you go along. You want to be getting faster as you go. So the first ones, you get the rings at your hand, and then the throws get easier as your hands get rid of weight. And then right at the moment when you should be doing the fastest throw, I've got to reach down quite low to grab these next ones. And it's actually the slowest gap. It's the longest gap between throws, back up to 28. So we go 27, 22, 20, and then 28. And it takes longer just to reach down, grab these rings, get them into position where I even want to start throwing. So this is what, in my ring design, I realized that this traditional ring design is good for performing. It's good if you're already good enough to be training with the height of throws and the speed of throws. But what I wanted to do is make it so the position of the rings when I grab them, I don't have to reach all the way down here to grab them and to the side, because when I'm doing the throw, I'm wanting to throw up the middle of my body. So why am I reaching down and out to grab the rings here to then bring them back up and in to then do the throw? So just to make that really clear, what I want to do is when I'm grabbing the last rings is I don't want to be going too far down and to the side and bringing them up and swinging them in together and then going them up. What I really want to do is have them already where I want to throw them. And I realized that the person who'd done this the best ring holster design so far was Willie Colombioni. So let's have a look at his ring design. Actually, let's go to a slightly different video here. Yeah, because this one, it's a lot clearer. So when you actually see see the level of his hands here. He's doing the first throws at this height above it. So he does the first, let's just watch it in normal motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what he's not having to do is reach outwards. He's actually just grabbing the rings from a pretty good height. He's still having to put his hands down a bit more, but he's pretty much putting his hands exactly where he wants them to be to do that last throw. So he takes them here. He does a throw. Again, the camera's wobbling around a bit, but if you see, each time he brings his hands down, he's bringing them to about here. And then the last one, when he throws them, he's bringing his hands down a little bit further, but it's like here rather than here. And that's already much better than the other people. We can look at it like a little bit of a better view here. Let me lock this in. So he does the first throw there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this last throw is what I was wanting to emulate here, is the difference between when he's doing his last throws here, his hands go down to wherever. And then when he grabs these last rings, he doesn't actually have to move his hands from the middle of his body. And because I knew I was going to be doing a fountain, I was going to want to be throwing all of the rings up the middle. I wanted the rings to be right there. And when you actually look at his things, I made a note of it here. Between the first two is 28 frames between these first two throws. And then it gets 25 frames, and then 19 frames, and then another 19 frames. So he doesn't actually have to slow down the pace of his throwing. Like the gap between the throws doesn't go down as he continues on. He's got the technique good enough that he doesn't have to reach down to the side and then reposition the rings and then throw them up in a fountain. He can just grab them pretty much where he needs them to be. Again, aesthetically, I'm not a fan of this for performing on stage with this style, because the way that you put on the ring holster isn't the most flattering kind of thing, and the positioning isn't the most flattering. But he has it there, and he does 10 rings on stage very impressively. But what really caught my eye with Willie Colombioni's thing here is his can I find the video of him doing the 12 rings? Yes, I have it here. So he uses the same ring holster for 12 rings, but in this case he has 2 rings per holster. So when he throws them up, this is the 12 ring record. Again, it's a little bit difficult to see in this one, but he does the throws and he gets rid of 4 rings per hand, all to height 12. And then he grabs 2 rings, throws them, grabs another 2 rings and throws them. And I was like, that's what I want. I don't want to have 4 rings per hand and grab 1 ring each. I can reduce the amount of effort that I need to put through my hands and per throw if I can start off with the fewest amount of rings possible. So I did quite a bit of experimenting at this point. Let me get back to, I moved the frame. Let me get back to, oh no. Well, it's a good job you can't see this because I've just completely messed up my desktop view here. Let me bring this over here. So that should be about right. Let's bring this back here. So where's my experimenting? That's the old ring design. And so I experimented. Okay, so here we go. So I experimented with 2 rings, is what I finally settled on. I experimented with 3 rings per hand and then 2 in the holster. Here's me also doing, I have 2 rings in the hand and 3 in the holster, because again, when you get up to Albert Lucas, when he's doing 14 rings, he has 3 rings on one side in the holster. So I was experimenting with that. So here it is, doing 2 throws, and then so it's throw, grab, throw, grab, throw, grab, throw. So it's two normal throws, and then you start grabbing, and that worked out pretty well, but was okay-ish. I took it to the extreme, which is, again, might be slightly difficult to see here, but I've got 1 ring and then 4 rings in the holster. So I'm going throw, grab, throw, grab, throw, grab, throw. So technically, every throw takes exactly the same amount of effort per throw. So I throw one, and these were the 90-gram rings that I was using here. So I throw ring, it takes 90 grams. I'm accelerating 90 grams up to height 10. And then every single other time, I'm just doing that. Lots and lots of times of accelerating 90 grams up to that height. Now, this was dumb. It was stupid, because it turns out you don't actually need to be throwing 1 ring like each time you throw to the height. I just wanted to experiment with it because, again, like Sergey Ignattov and the Chian brothers, they wanted to make it so the first time they throw a ring to the height of the final number, they're doing it with only 1 ring in the hand that is doing that throw. So that's what I was experimenting with here. So 1 ring to the height at the time. But it turns out doing throw, grab, throw, grab, throw, grab, throw, grab, throw just is a lot for your brain to get hold of, and actually then slows you down quite a bit. So I think I made a note of what this was, but again, it didn't really help with the pace of the throwing because I was having to do extra grabs in between. And the balance that I struck in the end was not 4 in the holster and 1 in the hand per hand, not 3 in the holster and 2 in the hand per time. I just went back to where is the video that I have of me just doing this within the right amount here? Yeah, so I guess it's this one here, which is in the end, I wanted to have 2 per holster and 3 in the hand. And I did the positioning slightly different than Willie Colombioni's. Willie Colombioni's holster, if I can find the one of his, is kind of low down here, like in front of his thighs, in front of his, area down here. And I didn't want to be reaching down lower than that. So let's check this out with this. Is this the 9 ring? So yeah, this is me doing 9 rings in the same pattern as the previous holster. But when I'm doing these throws here, where my hand is going down in between, I wanted to position the rings in the holster so it's almost indistinguishable if I'm doing a normal throw straight from the hand or if I'm doing a throw from the holster. And I think this is one of the clearest ways I can express this here, because the first throw, my hand is going down to this angle and I'm doing the first throw. And then my hands are going down to like slightly lower than horizontal. And then the throwing motion is coming from the wrists. So my wrists are flicking upwards. And then the same thing with the next one. Arms coming down to about horizontal, throw upwards from the wrist and fingers. And then when I'm grabbing the rings from the holster here, again, my hands are in exactly the same position as they were when I was doing the previous throw, not grabbing. So I wanted to make it where I'm grabbing the ring as close to the point where I begin the throws normally, okay? And if you remember, I counted the frames between each one, and it was like accelerating. When I was using the old holster, it was going like 27 frames, 22 frames, 20 frames, and then it went slowed down a lot to get to 28 frames. But what I was really pleased with when I analyzed this video frame by frame was that between the first 2 frames is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Between the first 2 throws is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay. And that's where the next one is. And guess what? It's 23 frames to the next throw. And then to the next throw is 23 frames. And to the next throw is also 23 frames. So what I did is I cracked the code of making every single throw, or the gap between every single pair of throws from the same hand, the exact same time, and with the hand positioning to the exact same hand positioning here. So here's me getting 9 rings. Again, this was just me doing 9 rings, but I wanted to show you this one because I'm using the same pattern as the previous video that I showed, which is here. So these are the same rings, 105-gram cathedral rings in the same pattern, but the pace that I'm throwing is completely different. Here it's a slow throw, fast, 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 and then really slow at the end. And then when I get back to, is it here? Yeah, same rings, same pattern, but the pace of the throwing is just so much more clear. And then, of course, the final pattern is cleaner. Again, I've been training numbers a lot more than like trying out for the first time. I'd previously done 9 rings, and the ring holster I used was I had a pair of shorts, and I just put a pen in each pocket and then hung a ring off it. Hey, maybe I can just show that now. My original ring holster that I did back in the day was a pen in the pocket, and this was my original ring holster. Oh, can you see it like that? So do the ring holster and then grab this and throw it. So budget ring holster, pen in the pocket. All right, so that's what I was working with here. And here I was using the 105-gram rings under quite a high ceiling, because these are the rings that are visible in here. But then when I go into the other studio at Catapult, the white rings I can't see in the ceiling, but then these darker, I've just taken it away. So let's go back. Let me say that again. So here is me doing 10 rings with different rings. These rings are 90 grams each. They're kind of like Babash style rings, not cathedral rings, so a bit lighter. And they're visible against the white ceiling, whereas these dark blue and red rings aren't visible against the dark brown ceiling in the other studio. So here's 10 rings. This is the first time I ever did 10 rings, and pretty much exactly the same, going for the positioning of my hands when I'm throwing and my hands are coming down. Each throw is then being thrown from exactly the same point as where I would grab the ring when I'm grabbing the ring holster. And it's going up and I'm throwing either side, grab the rings, and I'm trying to make my hands to be exactly the same position. And it didn't quite work out. I've updated the ring holster design, but this is what I was going for in this case. Rings up the middle. Looking pretty good. I also experimented. Oh yeah, and that's 10 rings. And did I do this one? Yeah. So it takes less effort to do these lighter rings because they're 90 grams instead of 105 grams for the cathedral rings. And this one, the pacing is pretty good. So this is 21 frames, 20 frames, 18 frames, and 20 frames. So very similar. But again, it's sort of like I'm in the margin of error with the frames here. So the pace of the rings is very, very good. So it's slightly slower. The first launch is a bit more because it doesn't matter about the speed of the first launch. This is what I worked out. The speed of the first launch doesn't matter. It's all about the pace between the rings. So that's why when I got rid of those first rings, only 2 in each hand, I could move them up and down as quick as I want. So very good pacing here, frame by frame, counting the frames with 10 rings. And this is my first ever 10 ring flash. And I think it looks pretty good. All right. What else did I want to talk about here at this point? Oh yeah, I also tried out, what was the other experimental ring design? Is one here? No, not that one. Not that one. Oh, I can't find. Oh, so this was one. This looks pretty much exactly the same as the previous ring design, but actually they're in a slightly different position. So I actually wanted to try with the rings on the outside. So this is the same parts of the ring design, but now I'm throwing in the middle and having the rings that I want to grab on the outside. And this doesn't work, and this is the difference between using ring holsters for a fountain pattern and a ring holsters for a cascade pattern. If you're doing a cascade, having the rings on the outside is good because you're wanting to grab them. You're wanting to grab them at the side, out to the side, and then throw them across. If you can see my mouse, you want to grab on the outside and you're throwing them across. So when you reposition them, when you're making this grab, again, I was just testing this out with fewer rings. Here, I'm having to throw them up straight. And now I'm grabbing rings on the outside, and then I'm having to, oh, did I give up on that one? So I'm throwing them up straight. Maybe it's difficult to see with this dark video. And I'm grabbing from the outside and then having to redirect them upwards and inwards. And it was just getting wider and wider. And I want to actually keep the pattern pretty good. So I'm throwing in the middle out to the side. So this was a dead end. But it was good to try it out. It was good to experiment with rings on the outside and throwing in the middle. But actually, what I wanted to do was do the throwing on the outside and grabbing in the middle in the style of Willie Colombioni. It doesn't matter. The rings in the middle don't really get in the way if you're trying to start off with a wide enough pattern to throw more rings. So that was my 10 ring journey, and I was pretty happy with how it went. My ideas about the positioning of the rings was correct. As far as I can tell, it was like, I wanted to test this out. Would I be able to get 10 rings like this? And in the end, I could have probably done it with just 2 rings here. And this is what I did now with these other rings, which I'll get onto in a second. But yeah, I also did it with four rings per hand and then 2 in the holster, a bit like this, slightly updated holster design. So yeah, this was the first time I did that. Again, pretty steady. And did I, yeah, and that was like 21 frames, 20 frames, 18 frames, 20 frames. So again, pretty similar within margin of error. You can't really graph it out. It doesn't start slow, then speed up, and then go slow again. It just goes pretty clear all the way through. So, and now I'm going to take a drink and I'm going to start talking about 11 rings and 12 rings. So, oh, I've been half an hour on ring design already. Well, let's move on to, here's some people doing 12 rings, and again, just with the traditional holster. So you go, this is with an asynchronous as well. So this is Rudolf Levitsky doing 12 rings as well. But let's now go look at Ivan here. Ivan Dragso, he did 12 rings, and he was using cathedral rings as well. These are 105 grams. Crazy to be able to try to accelerate this much space, force up and down. The amount of force it needs to accelerate this mass up and down. He's starting with 5 rings per hand. 5 rings per hand is a lot. And he's having to put in a lot of effort. And I analyzed him, and he really does slow down. Between the first 2 throws is 28, and then 24, and then 21, 21, 21. So he gets the right speed at the end, but because the rings are so heavy and it takes so much force to accelerate them up and down when he's got so many rings in his hands, he's having to throw them higher to accommodate for the extra time that he's taking on these first set of throws. And he speeds up as he goes through. So again, it's 28, 24, 24, 28, 24, then 21, 21, 21 between the throws. He does it, but that's a lot of effort to get those first rings up high enough, because he's just like, again, this is 5 rings per hand he's doing, cathedral rings. So it's just so much weight, like I say, to accelerate this weight up and down. Just to accelerate the first one up, it's 525 grams he's having to accelerate just to throw one ring up to height 12. So I decided to go in a different direction, which is to make myself a custom set of rings specifically for numbers juggling. In my show, I juggle the same rings, these very nice cathedral rings. I really love juggling them. Perfect for juggling 5 rings. Perfect, really good for juggling 7. Great for juggling 3. I wish they were slightly stiffer to make 5-ring pancakes more easy, because the stiffer the ring, the more control that you have over it in this kind of like floppiness nature here. So I decided to go, when I was doing up to 6 in one hand, I decided to make a lighter ring. And here I am doing 6 rings in one hand, okay? And I'm doing 4 from the holster. No, sorry, 4 from my hand and 2 from the holster. And here, the pacing, if I look at frame by frame, it's 21, 19, 18, 18, 17. So the shortest gap between Ivan's throws is the same as my slowest throw. Okay, so the gap between Ivan's fastest throws, which are these ones in the middle here, these ones here, which is 21 frames between each throw here, his fastest throw is the same speed as my slowest throw. So I start off with 21 frames between the first 2 throws, and then it gets faster from there. And because it's getting faster from there, it means I have to throw lower. And me and Ivan, we did our calculations, and we used some different online calculators. And if you actually put them side by side, Ivan, he is throwing to a height from his hand. So let me show it here. So from his hand where he's letting go of the ring, and to where he's catching the ring again, which is about the same height. So that same height, we're just assuming that the same height that you throw is the same height you catch. He's throwing to a height of 5.4 meters, or slightly above 5.4 meters is the average height of his throws. Me, the height of my throws is 3.97, so it's quite a lot lower. So he's getting between 5.5 and 6, and the height of mine is between like 4 and 4.5. So a huge amount less. So like 1.5 meters lower per throws. And then we did the calculations that the time it takes in the air at that point, and also then we started calculating, hey, I made these rings which are 3D printed. They kind of got like these 3D printed sections on the inside, and then layers of plastic glued to it on the outside, and then tape around the edge so I can see it against the white ceilings if I'm performing doing white ceilings. 50 grams each. So let me just make that really clear. Ivan is using 105 gram cathedral rings, and I'm using 50 gram rings. And that is a massive amount. So if we're both going to do 12 rings to the height that I'm guessing here, Ivan, the total momentum, which I'm not going to talk about throw momentum or like the force they got to throw, because he's doing fewer from the holster. But we worked out that coming down into his hands when he's doing the catching at the end is like 12, I can't remember the exact units, but it's like 12.5 kilograms per meter times meters per second. So in other words, his rings are coming down from a higher height, faster, and they're heavier, and so they're hitting his hands. Like the amount of force coming down into his hands as he's doing the catching is like 12.5 kilograms. And I'm doing lower throws. He's doing this, crazy heavy rings really high, and I'm doing lower throws with lighter rings, and they're coming down from a lower height, hitting my hands with less force, and it's 5.2 kilograms per meters per second, or times meters per second. So I'm just saying the momentum, this is what we're talking about, the momentum that he's doing at the end of a 12 ring pattern just to catch all the rings, the force that he's stopping that's coming down is 12.5 kilograms, and I'm 5.2, like 5.25 kilograms coming down. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want, because the amount, all the force that's coming into your hands at the end of a pattern is the same force. You're having to put that force to get them up to that speed, and they're coming down with the same speed and same force as you imparted them with as they're going up. So that's what I wanted to do. Ivan using only one ring in a holster per hand, like 5 from the hand and 1 for the ring, is just so much more energy. I mean, it took him years to do it, and he was like, yeah, I got to the point where I could only do like 5 or 6 attempts before it hurt my body too, like I was putting too much force into my body. And I'm like, hey, I did this on my like second attempt, which was really annoying because I wasn't videoing it, and then it took me ages to get it a second time. But yeah, six rings in one hand, and I was like, that took like hardly any energy at all. So that's what I started working on. I started working with these 3D print. Oh, I just realized you didn't see this. Me showing these two lasters here as well. Hardly any effort to get this is what I'm trying to say. So let's switch back to the webcam, and yeah. So what this ring is, it's a 3D printed sections, and then layers of PVC, like sheet PVC sheets, which are like 0.3. So again, it's like mostly air. If you take this ring apart, it's like air. And this is what I took from watching lots of videos of people who make radio control planes and other like aerospace kind of experimental videos, because they're like, has to have this amount of lift, and it's only being driven by like a canister of compressed air, so it's got to be as light as possible. So this is the kind of thing that you see in aircraft wings when people 3D print stuff. They never 3D print something solidly. It's always as much air as possible to make it as light as possible. The good thing about this is that the momentum that it has hitting the floor, like how heavy it is, what is it? Mass times speed and equals the force, or whatever the equations are. Again, I'm just doing it off the top of my head here. Is that it doesn't actually have to be that strong. People have asked me how strong are the rings, and it took ages and ages and ages for one of these to break for the first time. And then the first one that broke cracked, hit like here. Like it has a crack in it, and it cracked mostly because I was doing it in this space, and it hit this metal beam along the top. So I threw something up, it hit the metal beam, came down, and I picked it up, and it was cracked. And I was like, oh, that's a real pity. It means my design of these rings is more flawed. And then I looked at this, and I was like, hey, this is the first one I ever made, and it has a different design. Like the joins are glued in a different way, and there's like more joins as they go around, and it's sort of like it's not just like one bit of plastic, there's like layers of plastic. And I was like, oh, it's really great that the ring that I made as a test and thought that's too flexible and is obviously not strong enough, when I did the testing, that was the first one to break. And then since then, I've had a few little breaks, a few cracks, but nothing really that bad until I tried out another style. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, is that the lighter something is, the weaker it can be and still not break. Because I've had other rings break when I tested out the, do I have a video here? Oh yeah. So this is me with one of the Babash rings. I've never juggled a set of Babash rings that didn't break, and also I was having trouble with the ring holster design here as well. That was breaking because it was made out of brittle plastic. I broke a cathedral ring. Unfortunately, not one of mine. It was one of Catherine's cathedral rings. But that's not the normal one. It was more brittle because the dye for the special color that she was using had made the ring more brittle. So I broke a cathedral ring, and I broke a Babash ring, and then the first ring that I broke of my own was the prototype that didn't work. But here's the problem with this, is that when I'm throwing the final ring, it doesn't. Well, actually, I think I've got one of the videos that I have here. Yeah. So you can see here, when I'm throwing this, no, you can't see because it's on there. Did I just show that whole thing without showing the ring that was broken? I'm so bad. All right. I'm not going back to the main webcam. I'm just sticking on this view here. So when you actually look at this, you can kind of see when I'm doing the final throw, if the ring isn't completely aligned, when I'm grabbing it, it's kind of having to go up at an angle. And you can see this angle here this final throw angle. It comes from me throwing while moving my hand sideways and the ring not quite catching up. It's subtle, but it does come up at a strange angle. And when I was training with doing 6 in one hand with these light rings, what was happening was that when I was grabbing the last ring here, I was throwing a ring, and then I was grabbing these other rings, and as I was moving them, this was twisting, this was wobbling around, a wobbly ring. And as I was doing the throw, I was starting the throwing motion, and the ring hadn't quite wobbled into the right place. So as I'm throwing, it's twisting around. You see, this is really wobbly. And again, the more wobbly it is, the lighter it can be and the weaker it can be without breaking. Because when it hits the ground, it's hitting, and if it buckles a bit, it means that the force that's going into the ground is going into bending the ring rather than just like it's too brittle and just snaps straight away. It's like why you have suspension on cars. You don't just ram into a curb and expect the car not to break. The more flexible, the better it is, the lighter it can be. And that's what the benefit of having this is, really flexible, really light. But it turns out these were too flexible. They were fine for the first throws. When I'm doing 4 rings in one hand, I'm throwing them up. Everything's great. Throwing up, no problem at all. Up and down, because my hand is just going up and down. I'm not putting any twisting motion. I'm not repositioning them anyway. And as soon as I started grabbing these rings from the ring holster and trying to throw them up, any amount of issue of like moving my hand even slightly to the side was putting this twist on it, putting this torsion, and then I was letting go, and they were like twanging out of my hand. And when a ring isn't straight and you're letting it go, it really does twang off. Woo, like this. Woo, like this. It twangs, and if it moves this way, and it twangs. And I wanted to get rid of that twanginess. So I 3D printed a new set of rings, which were heavier. And these heavier rings, again, look pretty much the same from the outside. But the inside, this is not the final design. It's just a similar kind of thing. It's more solid 3D printing. And then to reduce the weight, I could 3D print, or I could remove these voids before 3D printing. So again, this is not the final one. In the end, I have it in 3 pieces, so 3 sections that I could glue together. But I dialed in how flexible I wanted it to be, how light I wanted it to be, and I found a good balance. I tried one of 80 grams, one of 70 grams, one of 60 grams, one of 50 grams, and I worked out the kind of like 70-gram one was pretty much what I wanted to have. Again, it's less flexible in this way. Maybe I can show by waggling 2 of these around. Okay, this is the flexible one. It's waggling around like crazy. This one is less flexible, and it's slightly more flexible than the Babash, but not by a huge amount. So the lightness of the rings worked out. The thing is, when I then tried to do 5 of these in each hand, 70 grams straight away got to the point where it was actually a little bit more difficult. And I didn't like the weight, the added weight. I'd got used to by that time doing the 5 rings and 6 rings in each hand with the 50-gram rings. And so finally, I worked out the balance that I wanted after, quite a few weeks of testing. Let me see if I can find, what's the most recent video that I have here? Is it this one? No, I'm going to find it. Here we go. So let me bring up the most recent video that I did here, which is this one when I was trying out 11 rings for the first time. This is like my second ever attempt with these rings under a high enough ceiling, and it went pretty well. And what I'm actually doing here is this is the height of the 12 rings that I'd want to do. Of course, I did fail here, but what I'm doing is that I have in each hand, I have 4 rings, which are the 50-gram rings, and then the ones in the holster are the 70-gram rings. Because it turns out when I'm just moving my hands up and down to do these first throws with 4 or 3 in each hand, these ones are all with the 50-gram rings. And the reason I want those to be the 50-gram rings is because this is the time when there's most weight in my hand being accelerated up and down. In the first one, 50-gram rings, I'm accelerating up 200 grams. And then I'm accelerating down 150 grams. And then I'm accelerating up 150 grams. Then I'm accelerating down 100 grams. Then I'm accelerating up 100 grams, down 50 grams, up 50 grams. And then it switches over to the 70-gram rings, where it doesn't matter because I'm not ever accelerating these rings down. I'm only accelerating these rings up. So they go up. I do the fast pace, lots of weight in my hand, lots of mass in my hand to be accelerated up and down with the lighter rings. And then I grab these ones, and these ones, I'm only ever throwing them up to the same height as the previous ones, Does take slightly more energy, but not more energy to move them up and down. I'm only grabbing them and throwing them upwards. And when I grab them and throw them upwards, they're stiff. And so they don't wobble around so much. So this is what I'm experimenting with at the moment. This is what is my the current state of the art is a ring holster where each throw that I do, my hands go up and down to exactly the same place, as you can see here, pretty much going down to about horizontal, down a little bit lower on this one, a little bit lower on this one, but yeah, and then this is my first ever attempt at 11 rings, and I catch like the first 7 or 8, and then I catch all of these ones. I catch one and drop. So I managed to catch 9 out of 11 and like the first 8 or 9 in my first ever attempt. It never went that well again in that one session that I've done. And I've not tried it again since this session because I've been juggling under a low ceiling and I went on a bike holiday and now I'm relaxing before my next work trip. But either way, I was very pleased with the how this worked out here. Of how little energy it takes, how the rings don't slow down as I go. And did I make a and so the first throw is a bit slower. It's like 26 frames, but then goes 20 frames, 19 frames, 22 frames, 17 frames. So the rhythm isn't good, but again, it was like my first try at this kind of thing. So, but it averages out pretty well. It doesn't slow down too much and has a pretty good pattern. The last ones do go a bit further forward, but that's just a timing issue rather than anything else. Very happy with my first attempts at 11 rings. That's why I'm doing this deep dive now, is because I feel like I'm not on the final stretch by any means, but there's more to go. So I want to talk a little bit more now about, how long is this video? 45 minutes. Oh my goodness. So I want to talk about the design of the rings as well in terms of the size. Let me bring back the, what am I looking for over here on this screen, webcam. So one of the important things about the size of a ring, I think there's this legends that the juggling rings are this size because somebody got like a plate and a biscuit tin and just drew around them and like, yeah, that's the size of a ring. Yeah, cathedral rings, standard size. You know, what is it, like 32 centimeters across. But the size of the ring that I was really concerned about is this section. Like, how far is it from the outside diameter to the inside diameter? And when you're doing one ring, doesn't matter. Hands can go around. 2 rings, also great. No problem at all. 3 rings, I'm like, fine. I've still got a lot of control over the 3rd ring here in my hand, as you can see. Lots of grip. But as soon as you get up to 4 rings here, suddenly you see that like this one can wobble around, and it's actually quite difficult to control this ring here. And it's purely because by the time you get the 4th ring in, you're not grabbing around just the diameter, you're actually like trying to brace across this distance here as well. And the further out your fingers are, the more they get spread apart. So when they're tight in, you can grab no problem at all. And as you bring your hands outwards, you get less and less control at this last section, which is what's happening here. So when I was designing my rings, what I wanted to do is I tested out some bits and pieces like this, and I was like, oh yeah, I can hold them in my hands like this. And I worked out that what I wanted to do is reduce this down by, again, not very much, but this has got a smaller section across. Let me try with the blue ring so it's a bit more visible against the red ring here. So it's just, it's subtle. Again, you can hardly see the difference here, but this white one is slightly narrower inside diameter to outside diameter, which means that when I've got 4 of these in one hand, these last fingers can reach all the way round, and you can see that I'm kind of like gripping it much tighter. You see how my thumb and my finger can overlap a huge amount there. And now let's contrast this here. So here, my thumb and finger are only just touching each other, and then this one, let's get it here, they're kind of going all the way past each other. So this grip is what I was going for. I wanted inside to outside diameter a lot smaller. These are also a bit more flexible, so when you grab them, they kind of can twist, and you can, like, I'm kind of grabbing more of each ring, and these ones are more rigid, so it doesn't make as much of a difference. They are kind of glued together, and there's bits sticking out of them, but again, I'm assuming that I'm wearing gloves. These are mountain biking gloves, Endura mountain biking gloves, Endura trail gloves, size large, bought them from Amazon. I chose these ones to do ring juggling is because these are what I use for mountain biking, and yeah, each ring fits between there. They've got some like nice like rubbery bits here, and this means that the technique that I'm doing for all of the throws is it's very much not bringing my hand all the way down and doing throwing motions. I'm always wanting to do a motion which is like arm goes down to about horizontal, and then it's about flicking the wrists up. I never want to be moving my arm up and down at high speed. All of it comes from this motion here. It's just going from here up. That's the throw. That's the throwing motion I want to do. The more I can get it, so I'm just throwing here, from here to here, like this, the better it is. So it's like 1, 2, 3. You know, this is what I'm trying to do. And so it turns out I can do 8 rings in about this much height or whatever. So that's the consideration there. And finally, these rings are slightly smaller than normal rings by like 2 centimeters. And that is mostly to do with the 3D printer that I have, that the sections have to fit on the 3D printing bed. And the PVC sheets, I'm using like A3 size sheets. So if I find a piece of A4 paper, it's pretty much, the ring has to kind of fit across an A3 piece of paper, which is that size when you're talking about metric paper. So that's the reason why the rings are slightly smaller. I don't think the size of the rings makes that much difference because, again, most of the weight is, the weight is about halfway through. So if it's like 1 centimeter further out when you're doing a throw, don't think that's the main thing that makes a big difference. For me, it was the inside to outside diameter, the weight of the ring, and also they are slightly thinner this way by cathedral rings like 3 millimeters across, and these are slightly narrower. So my little finger just wraps around a lot better. So here, cathedral rings, little finger doesn't get around and touch my palm. On this one, it can get around and touch my palm. And that's what I was aiming for with the slightly smaller rings. I'm going to quickly look at my notes. Easy to accelerate. Oh, yeah. So another good thing about lighter rings is that I don't need to get them out of my hands. And so let me show 2 different techniques for the end of a pattern. Let me find an example. Who haven't I shown yet? Let's have a look at the 13 rings. So when you actually look at 13 rings here, Daniel Lysenko, he catches all of the rings, but he doesn't leave them in his hands. He's wearing bike gloves as well. So when he catches each ring, I've got to switch back over here. Let's check out Daniel Lysenko. When he throws each ring and catches each ring, he doesn't leave them in his hands. They all drop down around his arms. So let's look at this in slow motion. So he catches these rings, and as he's catching them, he's letting them drop around his arms. So each ring starts in his hands and then goes around his arms. Pretty good. Let's find someone else who does a similar thing. What does Ivan do? He starts catching, and then all of them go in his hands, and then at the end, none of them are in his hands except the last 2. Only the last 2 rings in his hand each time. And I think this is a good technique, and this is what I was doing. This is what I do on stage, and this is what I was doing back in the day. And this is what I was doing here with these rings. I think, catching them all, letting them drop around my hands and go down my arms. And you've kind of got to do that when using big, heavy, normal-sized cathedral rings, is because if they're in your hand, the next one coming down, you just can't grab it that well. But then I looked here, Albert Lucas, and he does the opposite. He starts catching. None of them go around his hands. He just catches them all in his hands, or in between the rings here as well. And the reason he can do that is because these rings fit in his hands. These are obviously like smaller rings, but also he can move his hand. Once the rings are in his hand, he moves all of them to the ring. Like maybe you can kind of see as these come down, he's kind of using the rings to guide the next rings into his hand. So what he's trying to do here, he's trying to make it so when these rings come down, they can slide off each other and he can grab it. And I was like, I want to experiment with that. So when you actually see me do this with these, like say with the 6 rings in one hand here, I'm catching them all and I'm not letting them go around my hand because it works out that it's faster. Instead of doing a catch, let me put it back to the webcam. Instead of doing a catch and a drop around the arm, catch, 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 and then you've got all 6 rings in one hand. I found it suddenly a lot quicker to go catch, catch, and then catch, catch. And with gloves in your hand, I don't have to worry about the rings slapping me and like snagging me. When the rings are much lighter, it doesn't hurt if anything goes wrong. And most importantly, because these rings are only 50 grams each, when I caught the first one, if I need to catch the next one over here, I can very quickly move over there because I'm only accelerating 50 grams over to catch this one. And then the next one's coming down a little, maybe it's coming down over this side. So I can very quickly accelerate 100 grams over here and catch the next one. Oh, hit the microphone. And the next one's here. And I can just move the ring even when I've got 4 rings and I've only got 2 more to catch. I can still get my hands, move them pretty quickly. They keep pretty solidly in the air, and each time one comes down, I can just grab the next one. Now, to do that same thing with cathedral rings, where, say, I've got 4 rings in my hand, and I'm moving these rings sideways, suddenly, to go from here to do a catch, to there to do a catch, and there to do a catch, these rings are like, what? I honestly, just moving my hand backwards and forwards, I can't keep them in line. This is what happens. It goes like this. So straight away, with heavier rings, to do a catch here, to do a catch here, and to do a catch here, it's like catch, and you're tangling, your arms are getting tangled up straight away. And again, I could probably find a video of that actually happening to me. Maybe, let's go back. Yeah, maybe this one. Does it even happen? I think this is actually what happens here. So I'm trying to do all the catches in my hands, and these rings are a little bit more complicated. So again, you get this thing where some of them are in the hands and some of them move around. So I worked this out with these slightly lighter rings under the lower ceiling in Studio 1. This is Studio 2, and I've got a bit more space. And here, I'm letting the rings drop around my hands. Here, with the slightly lighter rings, I can just catch them all in my hands, and it kind of saves time with the catching. And then with the even lighter rings, I'm doing the same kind of thing. And if you can see here, I'm reaching back like here, grabbing this ring back here, and then moving my hands forward. And you can see how easy it is to move my hands around with 50-gram rings in them compared to if I'm moving my hands around with 105-gram rings in them. The pattern has to be closer. They all have to come down in the right place. And here, it wasn't a good pattern, but the rings are so light that I could just move my hands around and grab everything I wanted to do. All right, so yes, and the final thing is, if I'm using stiffer rings at some point and heavier rings for the last 2 throws, like I did with the 11 rings, the last rings that I'm throwing are being moved around less. So all of these first throws are with the lighter rings, and it's only when I get to the very end where I've got to move my hands to the correct position with heavier or more rings in them. So I think I've got to the end of all of my notes. Hopefully you've enjoyed this deep dive. It was actually longer than I was expecting, but I've ticked off all of my notes. So to go through them, yeah, the positioning of the ring holster, it was really important. I haven't actually shown the final ring holster. This is the current version that I have. Let's go back over to the webcam. Oh my goodness. So this is the current version that I have, which is, it's 3D printed with sections in TPU. None of this is the final version, but I got to a point where it stopped breaking. It was no longer breaking, and as soon as it no longer braked, as long as it was no longer breaking and it kept working, this is what I went for. It's got 2 straps, strap here and a strap there. This one goes around the waist. This one stops the whole thing tipping forward. This extra bit isn't needed. I could probably chop that off. And then, yeah, I could slide these up and down to different positions, forward and backwards for different rings. At the moment, this is set up for the 3D printed composite rings that I have. And to fit the cathedral rings or the other rings, I just slide this one this way a bit or this one this way a bit. It's just, with different bolts on this 2020 extrusion. So this is the current version. I would say it's not the final version, but I've not changed it for a good few months now of practicing with this. Pretty much since the first time I got 10 rings, this has been the same. When did I get 10 rings for the first time? I have the date right here. Yeah, since March the 6th, I've not changed this, and it's at the end of May, and I've used it a lot, and it hasn't broken again, and I haven't needed to update the design. If I did, I would probably do something slightly different, which is, let me show you. The ring jugglers who do these 13 rings, as we can see from Albert Lucas, the ring holster kind of disappears after he does it. Is it bad quality video, or is it that they're kind of clipped in here? Let's go back over here. Same thing here. I forgot to bring it over here. When Albert Lucas throws the final rings, the ring holsters seem to disappear. Where are they? I think they're just like some clips alongside his, they're kind of clipped on somehow. again, it's difficult to see with the low quality. Let's go across to Daniel Lysenko. He's got these kind of two straps around him as well, a lower strap and a higher strap, and the rings are kind of just clipped on. And as soon as he gets rid of the rings, the ring holster disappears, as you can see, as he walks towards the camera. He walks towards the camera, and I think this is it, just these little loopy up things here is all that's left. So when he throws the final rings, they kind of disappear. So the final version that I would like to do with this is, once I work out the ring design, and once I work it out, I'd like to kind of delete this whole section here, everything from here outwards. And then the rings that are in here would just kind of clip into something in this position, and then all of this, all of this section here would be missing. It wouldn't need to be there. Let me see if I can kind of explain. So the ring is just like floating there from here out to there, and this part is missing to make it that once I'm actually juggling, this is like less in the way, because at the moment when I'm doing it, it kind of gets in the way out here. So I like the position of my ring holster, and I like where it goes, but I would need to make sure that the rings are very well supported. Let's just compare the celebrations here. Albert Lucas comes here, and his wife or girlfriend comes in and hugs him really good. Daniel Lysenko, his girlfriend or wife is over there, and then she comes over and she wants a hug, and he goes and talks to his coach. I know his coach is important, but I'm like, your girlfriend's right there. You've got to celebrate with your girlfriend. Learn a lesson from Albert Lucas. He hasn't even finished juggling yet, and his wife comes in and celebrates with him. All right, might edit that out. What else did I want to say? No, I think that's it. My future ring design. I want a disappearing holster design. What else? Is there any more clips that I haven't shown that I wanted to show? No, I think this is it. This is my goal. No, this is not my goal. I don't intend to go for any world records or anything. But again, it would be good to have a ring holster that if I wanted to do more than just launch the rings, it would be good if it kind of disappeared and got out the way a bit so I could keep juggling. And I quite like that about Daniel Lysenko's thing here. So that's where I will end this deep dive video on ring holster design. Assume gloves. Assume that you're not going to continue juggling. It's purely for numbers. Yep, that's all of my notes. Hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and thanks to all my Patreon supporters who've been helping me out with the costs of having a 3D printer. It's kind of annoying that each time I make a ring design, I'm like, I've got to make at least like 6 or 8 or 12 of these to actually work out if it's going to be good or not. But so thank you very much to my Patreon supporters. You can also support me on Patreon by going to patreon.com/Luke Burridge, and I'd appreciate that. I'm not going to edit this video. It's going to go straight up as it is. It's already long enough. Going straight up on YouTube, and I'll catch you for the next deep dive video. Hopefully it'll be at the end of the project when I've done 12 balls for the first time, maybe 11 rings, maybe 12 if I can do that. And yeah, I'll see you then for the next one. Catch you later.